In the tragic aftermath of Haiti's 7.0 earthquake, the world turned its attention to the impoverished and devastated island nation. Reporters, relief workers, and volunteers from around the globe rushed to provide coverage and aid. Western leaders announced bold blueprints for building a new Haiti. 6 months later, only a tiny portion of pledged funds have been delivered. Over 1 million Haitians remain homeless, and much of the country's infrastructure remains in ruins. This week on Dialogue, Rebuilding Haiti, Talk versus Action. Hello again and welcome to the Woodrow Wilson International Center for Scholars in Washington, D.C. I'm John Molesky. Each week, Dialogue explores the world of ideas and issues in international affairs, history, and culture. Now I'd like to introduce you to this week's guests. Donna Leinwand is a reporter for the nation's top-selling newspaper, USA Today. She's been with the paper since 2000, covering legal issues, major crimes, the Justice Department, terrorism, and natural disasters. Donna is also a past president of the National Press Club. Dr. Sherry Fink is a senior fellow with the Harvard Humanitarian Initiative, a staff reporter for ProPublica, and is also a public policy scholar here at the Wilson Center. She was awarded a 2010 Pulitzer Prize for her investigative piece on doctors at a hospital cut off by Hurricane Katrina floodwaters. Welcome to Dialogue. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Let's start with a little time travel. I want to take both of you back to when you first heard about the quake and then how quickly you got there and under whose auspices. Donna, we'll start with you. Obviously, you were working for the paper. At what point did this become your assignment and how did you get there?
Pretty much the night it happened, I was working on it, by phone and trying to talk to aid groups and see what actually was going on. The next day, I flew out. I got to Santo Domingo in the Dominican Republic, and I traveled in. I basically hitched a ride with an aid group, which was the Adventist Development and Relief Agency. They have a very long established presence in Haiti, including a university and a hospital. So they were fairly well equipped to respond to this disaster, and so when we got there, they definitely had things to do. It took us about 6 hours to get there. And the first thing we did was we went to the hospital, which all the patients had been moved out of the hospital. They were all lying on the lawn, many of them with their IV bags attached because they were afraid about the structural integrity of the hospital. And thousands of other patients had just flooded the place. The doctor there, who had been educated in the United States at Loma Linda University, is actually a gynecologist and obstetrician, but he was performing amputations in a tent, kind of with a blue tarp and a bed and nurses and whatever in the hospital's driveway.
And you'd never seen an amputation before?
I had not. I had seen an amputation, in a surgical theater in the United States where you can't really see anything except a lot of doctors moving around. I was in the tent and they were doing one amputation after another, many without painkillers because they were out of narcotics.
How do you prepare for this type of coverage? Is there a game plan going in? Do you draw on past experience, or are you just improvising because you don't even know what you're walking into?
You're really just improvising because every single disaster I've covered is different. I covered the tsunami in Indonesia. I've covered over 25 hurricanes. And you just don't know what type of facility you're going to have, what kind of electricity you're going to have, your ability to even transmit your story. And you really just don't know what you're going to see when you get there. You don't know what the level of devastation is going to be, and you don't know what the level of government response is. In a place like Haiti, where they really, it really is a failed state already, they have virtually no government response. And in some place, we talk a lot about Katrina and how bad that response is compared to what I have seen in foreign countries. The response to Katrina was, phenomenally good because the United States has heavy equipment, and Haiti was almost totally reliant on the U.S. government to bring in heavy equipment, on C-130s.
Sherry, what about you? What was your circumstance when you first heard about the quake and how you ended up traveling to Haiti?
So I ended up traveling to Haiti about a week later, and I was able to embed with a U.S. government Health and Human Services field hospital that was set up in tents in the center of Port-au-Prince. And it was set up to do surgery, and ended up just kind of being overwhelmed with all of the need. And I've also been around a lot of disasters, and I can't really think of a worse setup in terms of the medical needs, where you have just like a really, really dense population in an area with very poor construction, widespread, very severe injuries all of a sudden. And then, as you said, just not much medical infrastructure to begin with. What there was severely damaged, doctors, nurses, et cetera, being killed. And so these groups of doctors, foreign doctors and nurses and teams that came in to help were really pretty overwhelmed with the need.
Now, are you there as a reporter, or are you there as medical support?
So I was there, as Donna pointed out. Every top surgeon and doctor in the U.S. really wanted to go to Haiti. It was a marvelous, wonderful, heartwarming thing. So I did, let a few people know that I was available to go as an aid worker if needed. I don't practice clinical medicine, and clearly there were many more qualified medical professionals to go in that capacity during that first week. So I came the second week as a reporter. Specifically looking at how the doctors and nurses would cope with this overwhelming need and how they would make decisions about triage. And I also was there as a reporter for a radio program called The World. So I did some radio stories about this hospital and how they functioned.
Is it possible, do you think, and for both of you in this case, to accurately report on what is happening there, to portray this, even if you have video, even if you have still pictures, and really get those of us who are watching from a distance to have any real sense or context for how devastating this actually is on the ground?
I really often wish we had something called smell-o-vision, because, you go to this disaster and it's absolutely overwhelming just everywhere you look. It's hot, it's dusty, there are buildings collapsed, there are people trapped, you can hear the screaming, and that you can hear and see on television. But there are so many other things going on, just the smell of death, and the screaming children and the hungry children. It is completely overwhelming. However, I do think that reporters in this case did a very, very good job of portraying the extent of the devastation, just the complete lack of everything. I mean, one of the things I wanted to mention actually is the water situation. All these doctors and nurses came in, and they have medical skill to provide. But one of the things that everyone really had to wait for was clean water. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's very hard, you would know this better than I would, to perform any sort of medical relief without water.
Right. It's funny you mentioned the smell, though. I have to say, after 9/11, when I first went to Ground Zero, that was the first thing that made an impression on me, this bizarre, acrid, almost chemical smell. And that's certainly something that's hard to transmit in a story. But what about that, Sherry? What about when you're communicating to your audience, whether it's the radio program or a written piece, do you feel able to capture what's really happening in front of your eyes?
Americans really got it, and I think that was evidenced by the fact that there was just such a huge outpouring of charity and response and caring, and people who I would speak with who, when I came back, really, I felt they really got what the devastation was. And I think sometimes when we cover disasters that are not so widespread, people have a much more severe vision of something than it actually was. But Haiti was just so bad and so widespread that the coverage that focused on the devastation really was emblematic of what it was like there. So I feel like in this case, people really did kind of get it. And I think that maybe there's less of an understanding right now about how the situation is. But in those early days, I think, yes.
Let's talk a bit about what the situation is now. Donna mentioned a barely functioning government, a failed state, I think you called it. Right now, you hear a lot of the reasons that some of this aid money has not been delivered is because if you don't have a functioning government, it's hard to find a place to deposit the cash. What do we know about the situation now in that regard?
I mean, I think that there are accusations flying back and forth. Certainly, the Haitian government has expressed their thought that it's more the problem of the foreign governments not ponying up the aid. So there's a lot of
finger pointing going
finger
on.
pointing, and I wouldn't say that I'm an expert on that aspect of things. However, I think that it is really super important that the commitments be be kept up. And what I was just mentioning to you that I just came from visiting a patient who just came to Connecticut on the 6-month anniversary, patient whose medical needs could not be served in post-earthquake Haiti, and she spent the last 6 months tethered to an oxygen machine in the general hospital, and she's watched very carefully kind of how the foreign aid has affected that hospital, and she said that she just sees far less aid right now, far fewer foreigners, and she said the patients are suffering because of it.
Do we have any idea of how many patients there are like this woman that you worked with, who can't get the medical attention they need in Haiti, but may not have a way out?
I think the point is there's a ton, and there were a ton before the earthquake too.
Right.
And the real hope after this devastating earthquake in Haiti is just this unfortunate country that's had so many disasters, that's been so put upon in so many different ways, that we would build back better, that there would be some sort of all the people that were touched like we were, and like so many in the audience watching tonight certainly were, that we would commit and make sure that things didn't even go back to the way that they were before, that they would be built back smarter and better with more commitment. And I think that's still the hope, and I know that there still is a big commitment to that hospital. Partners in Health, which helped bring this patient over here, has still continued working there. But we need to be vigilant, and we need to make sure that when the cameras go away and we're not there doing the on the ground reporting, that there still is this commitment that we don't let up.
But let me give you a little bit of sense of structure and what structure exists and does not exist in Haiti. We do talk about all this aid pouring in and how it's going to be spent, and it's, how do you keep this money free of corruption? These are the concerns that some of the foreign governments express, and they're very legitimate concerns. One of the things that Haiti lacks is a banking system. But a company is trying to go into Haiti and have mobile phone banking, where your money is sort of deposited not in a bricks and mortar bank, which they have very few of, but through an online account system, so that your money can be kept safely. You can get interest, but you can withdraw it, as you need. So they don't have a banking system. They don't have a sufficient electrical system. Almost every place that I've been to that would be middle class or upper middle class, the people have a generator because they know the power is going to be out 4 to 6 hours a day. Something like 80% of the people in Haiti do not have clean water. So this is a country that even before the earthquake really did not have anything to fall back on. They didn't have a proper educational system. They had very high unemployment. They had people that went hungry every single day. All of those things still exist, and then they're compounded.
Exacerbated now.
Yeah, by the earthquake. I mean, one of the main things is the building standards. Nothing was built to code because there is no code. Here you have to go and get a permit to build a house, and there's no such thing. So they wanted to build back better, but people need houses. So they are building back in the same way that they did previously, without a code, with poor building standards, with no rebar in their structures. And now we've come into hurricane season, and Haiti is in the cone, in that hurricane cone. And one of the things that has happened in Haiti is deforestation. Haiti is, Port-au-Prince is built kind of in a basin, and there are hills rising up, and those are kind of the suburbs, and there were no trees on the hills. And so now people are in danger of mudslides.
Here's a specific number that illustrates some of the inadequacies that are in place. Estimate that is, if you were just removing the rubble, basic cleanup, it would take 3 to 5 years if 1,000 trucks were running daily. Number of trucks that are on the ground right now, fewer than 300. So
yeah, I saw people just, taking rubble with their hands, and you see this mountain, and you see this guy, just sweat pouring off of him one by one, taking pieces off, and just think of what kind of an effort that is going to be, that's huge.
It's actually an employment program. It's actually an employment
I've heard
program.
that it does. It actually, people are...
That they employ rubble people, I think at $3 a day. It's through, I think, USAID or one of the UN programs. Yeah, I think it's actually the UN program that's doing this, and they're employing thousands of people. So forget about trucks. How many people is it going to take over how many years
by hand
to remove all this stuff?
Sherry, former President Clinton, I want to talk to both of you a bit about his commitment, an unprecedented commitment by a former president, saying that the next 3 years of his life, this is going to be a focus. Somebody called him the CEO of a leaderless nation. Comments from Clinton, he was saying that you're not talking about rebuilding the healthcare system. You're talking about building a healthcare system. Can you put that into some context for us as far as what other countries may have dealt with in dealing with natural disasters? Donna has outlined some of the inadequacies that existed in Haiti even before the quake.
Yeah, I think that's true, and there does need to be an investment in building, and I think, we're thinking about aid, but really empowering the people there to be able to have the jobs and, have the knowledge and the education to run a healthcare system, to, work within the healthcare system. And this goes beyond just health into other sectors. I think that one of the really sad things that I've noted, and I hope that this will change, is that some of the sort of the private sector efforts to go along and help to rebuild Haiti, private sector efforts within Haiti have not been so successful. I heard something about a private hospital there that had to close after the earthquake. And so we want to make sure that the aid empowers the private sector efforts as well as, just filling in for this need that's there right now. But certainly all the things that you mentioned, education and rebuilding or building a healthcare system is really important.
The Bill Clinton factor. I mean, this is different than other situations where we've seen where somebody as high profile as this has made this kind of public commitment. Can this be the thing that overcomes this concern that you've both voiced about moving on to another story?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, I have not seen a former president take this type of leadership role in a foreign country before. In fact, I got, I think, a press release 2 days ago from President Clinton and Jean-Marc Belrive, who is the Prime Minister of Haiti, and I'm like, oh, that's interesting. I think, Haiti needs, we talk about building hospitals, building infrastructure. Haiti needs help to build government, to build governance. And I think that Bill Clinton might be a really good guy to help do this. I mean, certainly, building a democracy is important, but actually building bureaucracy, here we complain about bureaucracy, but
until you need it.
Until you need it, and there is no bureaucracy. Or the bureaucracy in Haiti is so disorganized and so weakened that it's really hard to get a decision made, about anything. So I think that could be something, that turns out to be very interesting and possibly beneficial for Haiti.
The whole question of health concerns, what are the current concerns? So far, major disease outbreaks have been avoided. So I guess we should report some of the good news. Moving forward, though, clearly not out of the woods and won't be for a long time.
I think in natural disasters, typically you don't have these awful outbreaks that you tend to get more in the horrible conflict situations. It's interesting. Some studies have
what's the difference there? And there's a lot of similarities about the impact on the ground.
I don't think that anybody knows exactly why that is, but I think that the real risks right now, the sanitation situation is horrific. What we haven't talked about is shelter. Shelter is the big sore thumb sticking out there. People are just living in horrific conditions, and there are all the complexities about why that is. And we saw, even with the tsunami, that shelter question is a really difficult one because it has to do with land tenure. It has to do with, an effort to move people to certain areas. Well, what if those areas aren't where the jobs are? Are people going to actually move there, even if the shelter is better? And of course, the concerns about hurricanes, the concerns currently with the rains and people just being flooded out in their tents and having to stand up at night until the rain passes by. I mean, it's just, that is, and from a health side, that, to answer your question, is where the real risk is. When people are living in a place where you've got, sewage, you've got, poor shelter conditions, risks of infectious diseases. And mental health risks as well.
Go ahead,
Well,
Donna.
it's actually, talking about the rains, last week there was, they got the edge of a tropical storm. And it was really just a hard rainstorm. And in a hard rainstorm, 342 tents blew down in this one particular housing area.
Where people had been moved to.
Yeah, exactly. People had been moved there to sort of protect them from the elements and to set up a more organized camp. And there weren't really replacement tents available. I mean, so again, it doesn't sound like a lot of people, but 342 families sort of left homeless again for the second time, possibly the third time. And then, we have not actually had the widespread outbreaks of diarrhea that they thought would come. They thought that it would be waterborne illness everywhere. The one thing I can say that got done right was clean water. It was really interesting to watch. I watched a Canadian group come in, and they took a stream, and they set up a purification system using a swimming pool and a stream, and gave everyone fresh bottles to put it in. They gave everyone the water purification tablets. And they basically were able to provide 10,000 people with fresh water daily, which was more than before the earthquake.
Before the quake itself.
So they really haven't seen that sort of outbreak. However, because sanitation is so poor, because there are not sanitary latrines, that risk is, still exists.
You mentioned that Canadian effort. Who are the major players on the ground? The U.S. government clearly is involved, but who are the private institutions, the relief groups?
Well, the Canadian group was 16 people that did this. Wow. I mean, it was like a tiny little group.
You've got all the established aid agencies, all the mnemonics everybody's heard, the MSFs, the IMCs, the groups that had been working there for years and years already. And then, just people who also showed up, unaffiliated groups, and tried to do good. Some, sometimes going home because they didn't come prepared for what they were seeing and they themselves got sick. That happened. But some who've had a real impact.
I mean, like the Salvation Army has a huge, they have huge compounds, they have schools, they have childcare facilities. The Red Cross is there. The UN has an enormous compound because they were there on a stabilization, mission. But one of the things that happened to the established aid groups is they were hit by the earthquake too. Mm-hmm. Some of the UN structures fell down. Some of the workers who work for the UN, their houses fell down. So the aid workers who were there already were affected by the earthquake. So that was a factor.
And if I could just add,
Sure.
You asked the difference between why these horrific outbreaks like we saw after the Rwanda genocide and people fled to Congo, and horrific disease outbreaks, cholera. I think one of the big differences sometimes is access to populations, and we see now there are certain parts of the world where the aid workers, the people who want to help, really can't have access, and so that could have something to do with this question of why after disasters you don't get that. And the other thing is you only get the illnesses that are there before the disaster, so you wouldn't expect new illnesses to come in, but you would expect a wider, you would expect that the diseases that you typically see could be more widespread. So
on the notion of maintaining momentum in addressing the needs in Haiti, we talked about the concern of just the way the news cycle works and moving on to the next big story, but also we seem to be in a cycle of disaster fatigue. One thing after another. Shortly after the Haiti quake, there's a quake in Venezuela. We have the Gulf oil spill. Talk to us about that. Your notion about how people stay engaged when there seems to always be tomorrow's disaster looming.
Well, that is always going to happen. There are only so many disaster reporters out there. Not every reporter does that. Some reporters cover City Hall. And so we did have a series of disasters. We had Haiti, we had Chile, and now we've got the Gulf oil spill. And what tends to happen among U.S. reporters is that a U.S. disaster takes precedence over all others. So there's a lot of focus right now on the Gulf. We saw a little bit of renewed focus on Haiti in this last week because of the 6-month anniversary. I think that with Haiti in particular, it's going to be difficult to maintain a level of interest because Haiti has been a problem for so long. Haiti, it seems, goes from...
You're saying the world was used to Haiti being a struggling nation?
Kind of, yeah. I mean, it's not really a new story. They've gone from coup to hurricane to earthquake. before the earthquake, they had experienced, I believe the year before or 2 years earlier, 4 hurricanes in a row that were absolutely devastating, and they still hadn't recovered from those hurricanes when the earthquake hit. So, you've got Haiti essentially in a perpetual state of disarray.
And Sherry, scientists talk about things like rising sea levels and changing weather patterns that are often severe weather patterns, and that this type of natural disaster could unfortunately become the norm. And what about the humanitarian aid community and being stretched so thin already?
Yeah, I think that environmental related disasters are the next big thing that we all need to think about as a world, and where we want our resources to go. And that's always what disasters always teach us, and we always quickly forget because of our daily needs to invest in our own countries and our the many daily urgent needs that arise, is how much do we want to invest in preparedness, in mitigation, and even our own structures. There are parts of California where there are health facilities that have been grandfathered in that aren't up to code for certain types of earthquakes. So we, as a world, need to think about all of the risks, the hazards that could arise, and that sense that we all have that we want to invest in preparedness right after a Katrina or a Haiti. We need to really kind of keep that in the forefront of our minds. I mean, it was very interesting. A lot of the stimulus money that's been out there, spent, very little has gone toward disaster preparedness. And I thought that was kind of a missed opportunity. And in terms of covering disasters too, I think my guess would be partly that it's really expensive. It's expensive to send us down to a place like that where we have to bring everything with us, and the sat phones and in other places, security is an issue. It wasn't really in Haiti right after the earthquake, but these are all, expensive things, and the news industry has taken a big hit in recent years.
Donna, a quick final thought along those lines. We only have about 30 seconds left, but what is USA Today's editorial plan as far as staying engaged in this story?
Well, we have some freelancers there who are keeping us sort of apprised on a daily basis about what's going on, and then of course if they're, at certain points they're going to keep sending reporters back. I mean, USA Today is definitely committed to covering Haiti.
Donna, Sherry, thanks very much for joining us and for your ongoing work. In addition to thanking our guests, we want you to know that we appreciate your comments and encourage you to share them with us. And you can do so by sending email to dialogue@wilsoncenter.org. We look forward to hearing from you. Until next week, for all of us at Dialogue, I'm John Molesky. Thanks for joining us.
Dialogue is a co-production of the Woodrow Wilson International Center for Scholars and MHZ Networks. Dialogue is available via broadcast, cable, satellite, and telco on MHZ Worldview throughout the United States. To see how to watch where you live, visit www.mhznetworks.org.